Thank you very much. I'd like to call the regular meeting of council to order. Our clerk will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. We have a late item to add, Ms. Gurry.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Agenda item 2, procedural motion. We need to add Community Charter Section 90, subsection 1, subsection K.
Thank you very much. A procedural motion to proceed in camera. Move Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Manley. All those in Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 20th regular meeting of Nanaimo City Council. I'd first like to recognize we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Tonight's regular meeting of council will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. The question period sign-up sheet is on the table by the double doors to my left for agenda items only. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. And members of council have been authorized to attend electronically when appropriate and necessary, and Councillor Perino is joining us electronically tonight, so we're all here. The first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry, we have several, I gather, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. For agenda item 11, delegations unrelated to an agenda item, we're removing the delegation from Tim McGrath. We're removing agenda item 12A, housing needs report. For agenda item 12C, rezoning application number RA490 for 6030 Pine Ridge Crescent, we're adding a delegation from Raymond DeBeeld. And agenda item 15A, correspondence from the Nanaimo Community Advisory Board regarding request for additional access to showers and laundry in Nanaimo. We're adding delegation from Vicky Trill, Deborah Hollins, and Guy Boulot. And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Motion for the adoption of agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Manley. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Hemmens. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. For the Mayor's report tonight, I just want to announce right off the start, I know we're having a delegation tonight, and just to confirm that unless something dramatic happens and the world ends, on Monday at the Governance and Priorities Committee meeting of Council, we will be discussing a number of topics related to community wellness and livability, including Downtown Community Safety Action Plan update and the Community Safety and Security, as well as the Youth Resilience Strategy. There are a number of practical things I just want to report on tonight. Let's start with what I think most of us will see as very positive news. Issued a press release the other week. Last year, Nanaimo issued building permits of $410 million, this second only to 2019 in terms of record years. They were issued for a total of 1,370 residential units, with 1,065 of those in multi-unit developments. It's very positive news for the city. We still face a tremendous shortage of housing. The vacancy rate is not anywhere near what it should be for rental accommodation, but certainly this is going to help over the longer haul. Very pleased to announce that we have a new Systems Planning Organization Executive Director. It will be operational on April the 1st. The SPO was created in response to one of the key recommendations of what many of you will recall was our Health and Housing Task Force, co-chaired by Councillors Hemmens and Bonner, and was adopted by the City Council in 2021. In stepping into the job is Executive Director John McCormick. He has nearly 3 decades of experience in community development and deeply involved in Nanaimo's work to address housing and other matters for a number of years. So that's a positive step forward for the city. I issued a statement on March the 14th in which I have called upon the senior governments to recognize that it is literally beyond the city's capacity to control or repair the public safety crisis we are facing. As many of you know, there was an altercation on March the 12th involving an encampment of unsheltered people. There was an attempt to retrieve stolen goods from them, and serious injury resulted in the use of a firearm. We are in no worse shape, in my respectful opinion, than other communities around this province. But we have certainly received a lot of public attention, and it is my hope that the senior governments, both provincial and federal, are listening and understanding that, as I have said over and over again, no matter what we spend on policing, no matter how many community safety officers we hire, we are not going to solve the underlying causes for the incredible street disorder, which is unprecedented, I would argue, in the history of this province. And so I am hopeful that we will continue to be able to raise the profile of these issues, and that the province and the federal government within their jurisdiction will respond appropriately. On the good news side, I can happily announce that we have awarded the Culture and Heritage recipients as follows. For Excellence in Culture this year, Joel Good. He won an Excellence in Culture Award for his achievements in visual art. He's a traditional Coast Salish artist from Sinimic First Nation, well known for several inspiring public art installations. And an Honor in Culture Award to Margot Holmes for her long-term career as the Chief Executive Officer of the Van Crowland Symphony, promoting Canadian culture and championing the performing arts community for over 3 decades. They will be presented appropriately at an in-person public event, which is free of charge, at the Port Theatre on April the 25th at 7 p.m. On the practical side of things, the city and contractors have been busy for some time. So I want to confirm that the City of Nanaimo's Midtown Water Supply Project, which is a significant multi-million-dollar undertaking, is well underway. And from March the 26th to March 30th, the Nanaimo Parkway, Highway 19, will be closed between the Jingle Pot and 3rd Street intersection. and the College Drive and 5th Street intersection to install a waterline pipeline crossing. Over the 4-day period, the closures will be in effect from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Northbound traffic will be detoured via the truck route down 5th Street to Wakasai Avenue and up 3rd Street, Jinglepot Road. Southbound traffic will be diverted down Jinglepot Road, 3rd Street to Wakasai and back up 5th. Again, please, drivers, you are reminded to drive carefully and pay close attention to signage. Commuters and commercial traffic are encouraged to use the Old Island Highway 19A as an alternate route. And what always causes concern with a number of folks, we are engaged in shortly the annual water main flushing program, commencing officially on March the 20th. It's expected to start in the south end, and while this program is underway, users will see, potentially, short periods of low pressure and water may well be discolored. Water discoloration during the flushing program is temporary, and I emphasize it is not a health hazard. The flushing will continue until the week of May 19th, when the project is expected to be complete. And just a little quick fact, running cold water to clear any discoloration instead of hot water reduces energy usage. It also avoids trapping sediment in your hot water tank, so keep that in mind, folks. I've already announced the Culture Awards. We have no presentations, Ms. Gurry. Committee minutes are just for receipt. And I'd ask for a motion for adoption of the consent items unless there's something someone wants removed from the consent list. Moved adoption, seconded Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We now have delegations unrelated to agenda items. Colin Middleton, Nanaimo Public Area Safety Association, Public Concerns on Victoria Road. Thank you, Councillor Thorpe, for retrieving my pen top. You're a gentleman and a scholar. Mr. Middleton, good evening and welcome.
Hello.
As you know, 5 minutes, and I'll give you a minute warning when you're at...
I see the timer there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming tonight.
I just want to start before I go, if you don't mind, just holding the clock. I want to thank the Mayor and Council for engagement on this issue. I'm here because I'm a father of 2 young and growing boys. I have a wife, and we moved here a few years ago into South Nanaimo, and we love this city, and we don't want to ever leave this city. And it's because of that, which is why my family and I and my growing community of people in Nanaimo are working on trying to make it safer. I've used up almost a minute. The individual who was shot on the weekend in the face was my age. He's 39 years old. Could have very easily, and unhoused, he could have very easily been a very good friend of mine who I played music with in university, struggled with mental illness as a young adult, fell onto addiction, and it was on the streets in and out for many years, and ultimately passed away 3 years ago, well before his time. Your Worship, Mayor Krog, City of Nanaimo Council, please accept this letter prepared by the residents of the 0 block of Victoria Road and signed by 74 residents who live within 1 block. Over the last 3 months, the residents of the block have borne witness to a sharp escalation in suffering on their streets. The situation requires the city's urgent action. There have been an alarming increase in illicit drug use on sidewalks in this block, deterring residents from walking downtown. There is a substantial accumulation of used drug paraphernalia, including needles, burnt tinfoil, empty prescription bottles, used opiate smoke pipes, as well as discarded food and drink packages. This escalation coincided with the opening of the Salvation Army Emergency Disaster Services food truck that is parked down the block from the Outreach Pharmacy, and the initiation of the Enhanced Harm Reduction Program supported and funded by the federal and provincial governments within the last 3 months. With the increase of loitering in and around the entrance to the Outreach Pharmacy and Salvation Army food truck, there is also an increase in threatening and intimidating behaviors towards residents across the street including screaming at all hours, soliciting, trespassing, loud banging on doors at all hours, illicit drug use on front steps, unconscious people on residents' lawns, and damage to hedges and greenery of private property. There have been more than 3 instances in the last 3 weeks where a tent has been pitched on private property with the intent to establish encampment. But most concerning of all is the sharp escalation of ambulance visits, attending apparent illicit drug overdoses, and police responses to attend to violent altercations. Since January 1st, there have been 37 overdose ambulance responses as documented by neighbors and correlated to city records. For perspective, this is comparable to the total number of ambulance calls to the block in the preceding 3 years combined. In the last 2 weeks, there were reports of a sword being confiscated by the police during an altercation, and reports of vigilantism or possible hate crimes against unhoused people on the block. The situation is not safe for anyone at present, and we need it to de-escalate. Now, in the aftermath of a lot of the news that have come out in the last couple of weeks, our group has been attacked online as being vigilantes, as being NIMBYs, and even insinuated as being racist. Not true and not fair at all. It is distressing for the neighbors, including multi-generational families with small children and elders, to regularly witness these traumatic events right in front of their private residences. Residents have compassion for the unhoused population struggling with substance use disorders, but are at a loss as to how to help those suffering on the streets. This helplessness is distressing for the residents. On Check News this evening, we saw that the unhoused are armed, and there are 2 shootings in the last week where the shooter is still at large. Kylie's Clubhouse Childcare in the historic Century Home at Victoria Road and Selby Street closed in the last 3 weeks directly because of escalating drug activity and disturbances. Others are afraid to leave their residences, such as those who live at the seniors complex on Robart Street, despite having doctor's orders to get outside for regular activity outdoors. Renters love the neighborhood and are disheartened by what is happening, but cannot afford to leave due to Nanaimo's extreme lack of affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Middleton. Any questions? Councillor Manley, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually have a question for staff about the site on Nickel Street that the Salvation Army was going to move into for their meal program. Do we know where that's at with getting through the permitting process so that they can move their operation indoors?
Mr. Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff are currently working with the property owner and his architect in order to receive a complete application for that work that has not yet been received.
Is there a lot of remediation to do in that building to make it operable?
Your Worship, I don't think I have enough information to give you a sense of that right now. I think generally what I would say is there was works in the building that we believe occurred without a permit, and those either need to be removed or ultimately permitted. So that's what we'll be seeking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Perino and then Councillor Armstrong, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this is just to say I'm, Mr. Middleton, I just, you are truly one of our heroes. You've just done so much to make the public aware, and I really appreciate it. And I'm so sorry you've had some bad media. I know it's not true. I've seen the website, or not the website, but I've seen the social media, and there's just nothing to indicate any kind of nastiness on the part of the association. I'm just so thankful that you're there, and thankful that you're know our dilemma and understand it. So thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Perino. Councillor Armstrong.
I have 2 questions, if I may, Your Worship. The first one is, do you know, are there regular complaints being called into to the RCMP by residents, and do you know what the response is?
Yes, there are several complaints being sent to both bylaw and the RCMP related to the vacant lot property that's adjacent to the outreach pharmacy, or the medical services building on the block. There's an adjacent lot. It's not fenced. there's people that are congregating, and that's where many of the tents are being set up. So those get called in regularly. There's families that live in the homes surrounding, and so it's quite distressing to see what's going on there, and quite helpless to help. Additionally, there are a lot of calls for ambulance support, and I know that the people within the medical services building, particularly the outreach pharmacy, their pharmacists are coming out to help with as first responders to some of these overdose calls. And I've spoken with a few of the pharmacists, and that obviously they're impacted by all of this as well. And lastly, I can say that the reports of vigilantism and possible hate crimes against unhoused people on the block, those are incidents that have been reported to bylaw and the RCMP on a number of occasions. I think they have responded and they have attended, but there hasn't been any, no one's there to see it in the aftermath, and so the rumors are credible. And the eyewitness accounts are credible. However, there hasn't been, as far as I know, any ability to take action to de-escalate the situation.
And would you agree with me that this really isn't a police problem, but a lack of proper supports for those suffering from mental health and addictions, other than those that are chronic repeat offenders who we've had tendency to push everybody into the homeless, which I disagree with, because we've got some homeless that are there, good people, purely for financial reasons. Then we've got others that are mental health. We've got others with addictions. Then we've got some that are just criminals.
Yeah.
And then we have some that just can't function in society. So each requires a different solution.
Yeah.
From my perspective as a council at this table, I believe we've tried to do a lot by the additions of 19 more police officers, 10 community safety officers, et cetera. But are you pushing towards the federal and provincial governments as well to say, we need solutions for the Bail Reform Act so that these chronic offenders aren't keep getting out? We need to get housing for these individuals that can't be on their own, et cetera.
Yeah, and a bit of a long answer, but yes, in short. But the long answer is that I want to make sure that, when I say these things about responding and not being able to do anything, we as an association and all the people that we speak to, that as our members and the people in the community, we really appreciate the efforts of the RCMP, bylaw services, our paramedics, first responders, nurses that are in the emergency room and ICU, that do have unsafe working conditions in a number of occasions. As far as pushing at the provincial and federal level, absolutely yes. We submitted a press release late last night after catching wind of the shooting on Saturday night. We sent it to all media outlets through the South Coast and Vancouver Island, demanding that the national, Justice Minister and the Attorney General step in both at a provincial and a federal level. We know that bail reform is necessary to protect the public interest in terms of the safety and security of citizens, and that really has to happen immediately. And I would even say that, given that the city is at this point, declared to be unable to address this problem on its own, I have to wonder what kinds of tools does it have at its disposal in order to bring in more resources, not just law enforcement, but mental health and addiction support in the short term. We know that we understand this issue is complex. We understand that this issue is one that really gets to the core of what it means to be in a society and to have community. We see the suffering on the streets. We know that these people have had very difficult lives. And that's part of why this is so distressing for us, is because we do understand how difficult this is. And we're trying to find ways, and let's be honest, it hasn't worked so far, what we've been doing. And we are trying something different. We are all volunteers. We don't have any funding from the provincial government. In fact, you know, I hate to say it, but I don't even know if I want their money. What we really want is actually this to change. And so, yes, we do need those things to happen. We do need our elected officials really to step in. And I mean, they need to do what you know, they're grown-ups. You know, like, this isn't a time for politics. Like, this really is what I would call an emergency, and other people have said that as well. We are a nation that has become, for some reason, so polarized, probably because we are influenced so much by American politics. But this has to stop, because the polarization is exactly the problem. We aren't looking at trying to diffuse the issues that are ripping us apart. We're focusing on blaming somebody else, and that is exactly the problem. So we see this solution as being nonpartisan. We see this as every elected official, and I'd tell them all to their face that they need to grow up and deal with this, because they know that they can, and they know that they have the authority to, and for whatever reason, they won't. And basically, that's why we said enough is enough.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe and then Councillor Eastmere.
Well, thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you, if I may, to Mr. Middleton. First of all, I would like to personally thank you for the work of you and the Public Safety Organization. Thank you for your efforts and for the obvious concern that you feel for all of the residents of the city of Nanaimo. And it is a beautiful city, and we all want to be able to enjoy it. So I appreciate the work, the time you're putting in on this work, your passion, and also I really appreciate your reasonable and articulate approach, which I think will serve you well. Believe me, Council hears your concerns. We share the frustrations that many of our citizens have expressed, and we understand them. And as Councillor Armstrong, I think, has pointed out, and I believe you acknowledge, most of the long-term solutions are well out of the control of the city. But my question to you, sir, is this. From where you stand at street level, can you suggest any possibly small, concrete action that is within the power of the city that we could take to improve the situation in your neighborhood?
Thank you for the question. And yes, I do believe there's a few things. We do think that the city can work with the New Hope Center to move the Salvation Army food truck further away from the outreach pharmacy. We know it's not a solution to the problem of overdoses and social disorder, but it would be a first step in I would say, bringing the temperature down while we work towards more sustainable solutions. Second, we do feel it's necessary for the city to compel the owner of the vacant lot adjacently west of the 80 Nickel Street property, where the frequent loitering and makeshift sheltering is occurring, to install secure access restrictions such as temporary or permanent fencing. Third, we think the city can leverage its relationships with the Vancouver Island Health Authority and the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions to work with the medical professional services on the block to put stricter controls on drugs that are known to be resold into the street supply. We also think that the city can instruct the RCMP to investigate and intervene on the flow of prescription medications being diverted into the street supply, as we now know that this area is a hotspot. We think that the city can also deploy community safety officers on a routine basis to the block to encourage people to move along after accessing food in the pharmacy, just to reduce congestion. And sixth, to instruct public works crews to work with residents on cleanup program schedule of trash and biomedical waste left behind after illicit drug use on a regular basis. And I think in this one, you know, And some of these things the community safety officers have already started doing, and the RCMP have already started doing. And so we see those efforts, and we do think that those are helping. But it is, you know, it comes in and it cleans up, and then it comes back. You do it again, it comes back. And, you know, the residents of the area would be happy to help with some of this cleanup of their yards. But one of the problems too is that this is biomedical waste, and these are sometimes biohazards. So, you know, we're not trained in how to deal with these wastes. You know, I went around and picked up those prescriptions, and obviously those labels, and obviously that's nothing. But I mean, when you're talking about burnt tinfoil with potential residues on them, dime bags with I found dime bags with crystal meth still inside them. I've found a number of things that, you know, if a child or a young person were to stumble across, they might not know how to deal with it safely. And this is within a residential area. I mean, these are all family homes here. And most people, even if they're renting the homes, they have families. And so we're right up against, you know, some very severe social disorder right adjacent and within eyeshot of people, you know, going about their day-to-day.
Thank you very much. I just want to again reiterate that Council is well aware of this as a priority topic, and we will be having more focused discussions, searching for solutions, and appreciate your comments, and certainly those suggestions we can take under advisement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. Through you, my question is to staff, specifically referring to the first point about working with the New Hope Centre to move the Salvation Army food truck further away from the outreach pharmacy. Can you elaborate on the steps that the city has taken and how that's going?
Your Worship, I think this is probably a longer story, but it goes back to when there was a breakfast program in the city building on Fitzwilliam Street until we provided that property to BC Housing for permanent housing, which is under construction. So previously the breakfast program was out of that building. When that building came time for that building to close and for it to be demolished, the city went out looking for other partners to provide that breakfast program because there was going to be a void in the community. So Salvation Army stepped up, and we've provided some funding, which I believe runs through until August of this year. However, recently, I guess late last fall, early in the winter, there was problems with the building where Salvation Army operates out of, and ultimately that side of the building where the meal program was provided, they were forced to no longer use that older half of their building. So they've had to evacuate that side of the building, which left no other option. Staff recommended, because we had earlier discussions with the property owner at the theater, that they may wish to contact the theater. My understanding from there is they've had discussions, but upon further investigation, including from our staff, there was found to be some works that need to be done before they could move in there. So the bus is there on a temporary basis with the hopes that those works would have been short-term. I'm not sure as we sit here tonight about how short-term those works will be, though.
Could you let me know whether this is accurate? We received some information from the Salvation Army that staff had referred them to the property at 46 Nickel, and then only days after moving into that space, they were called into a meeting with additional city staff and told at that point that the building was not in compliance with city code. Is that an accurate reflection of how that went down?
I think I'd have to go back and follow up with staff to give you, if you wanted a minute-by-minute discussion of what occurred through your worship. I think what I would say accurately is that the city identified that there was a vacant building, there was a need, there was an emergency in lack of space, and the city identified a building that had space available. We don't have, detailed records of every building in the current state of them. So if through further investigations it became apparent that there needed to be some code upgrades, that would have been the responsibility of the property owner to address those. So we remain committed to working with the property owner and their architect once they submit the complete application to expedite that as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Just one last question. There's been some insinuation that the food truck doesn't have a permit to be operating in the capacity that it is. Is that accurate?
I'm sorry, Your Worship, a permit to, in terms of a health permit to provide food out of the bus? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, either to provide food or to be parking in the location.
So
where it
I would
is.
assume they would have a permit from the health authority, like any other food provider, to provide service out of there. The city doesn't
But they
manage
don't
that. I don't know that for sure. In terms of the parking, we have not issued a permit, but was an understanding that they would park there because they're using the commercial kitchen to some extent while they're providing the service.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Your Worship, I would just ask council to direct questions to the delegation, and then he can sit down if you have further questions for staff. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any further questions, Mr. Middleton. I very much appreciate your attendance here tonight. I think that when you started off tonight feeling compelled and appropriately to defend your organization, from my observation, if this were 20 or 30 years ago, the talk in the street would have been they're just a bunch of lazy bums, lock them up, they're criminals, ne'er-do-wells, etc. I think that the majority of the people in this community see the street disorder as reflective of a human crisis based around health and addiction and brain injury and trauma, and are still extremely sympathetic and supportive of solutions. And what your organization is trying to do is to draw attention to the issue in a compassionate and intelligent way. And for that, sir, I just want to say thank you to all of you and those of you who've come out tonight to show support on this topic. It's important, frankly, that senior government take advantage of this point in our history before things turn ugly, as they inevitably might, to use this opportunity when the reservoir of human compassion in our community is still largely full, to remedy the 30, 40 years of failed social and health policy that have led us to this crisis in our streets. So, sir, again, thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next item is 12B, Development Variance Permit Application Number DVP 446-5288 Scarsdale Road. Mr. Lindsay, we're tossing it over to Mr. Holm. Mr. Holm, good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'll try and be really brief on this. It's pretty straightforward. A development variance permit application for a rear yard setback variance for a proposed single family dwelling at the address noted. The proposed variance is from 6 meters to 4.6 meters. The notification has been required, statutory notification has been provided, and there's opportunity for anybody wishing to speak to the variance here tonight. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here wishing to speak to Development Variance Permit Application Number DVP 446-5288 Scarsdale Road? I'm not seeing anyone. Someone care to make the recommended motion? Councillor Armstrong moving, Councillor Hemmons seconding. Any discussion, questions for staff? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None, motion carries. Thank you. The next is 12C, rezoning application number RA 490-6030 Pine Ridge Crescent. Again, Mr. Holm, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Rezoning application for property shown in red on the screen overhead. The official community plan designation is suburban neighborhood. That's the city plan designation for the property. The proposal is rezoning from R1 to R5, which is single residential to 3 and 4 unit multifamily residential, consistent with the OCP policy, the city plan policy for the property. It would support a small scale, low density multifamily infill of 3 to 4 units. Concept shows 3 units as provided in the staff report. The property is, as you can see, located between the Island Highway and Metro Drive in the Pleasant Valley neighborhood. A number of conditions recommended to be secured with the rezoning should it be supported through to adoption. Conditions include road dedication, community amenity contribution, to the city's Housing Legacy Reserve Fund, BC Energy Step Code policy commitment, as well as commitment to general compliance with the site layout and building design that's shown in the staff report as well. I know the applicant is here as a delegate, and I'm happy to take any questions if council has any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holm. Mr. DeBeeld is, there we are. Didn't see you way in the back tonight. Here just to answer questions, Mr. DeBeeld, if necessary. Any questions for Mr. DeBeeld from council on this one? Not seeing any. Councillor Armstrong, if you care to read the motions in order. You're on.
Motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2023 number 4500.208 to rezone 6030 Pine Ridge Crescent from single dwelling residential R1 to 3 and 4 residential R5 pass first reading.
Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
Motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2023 number 4500.208 pass second reading.
Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Armstrong.
Motion that council direct staff to secure the conditions related to zoning amendment bylaw 2023 number 4500.208 is outlined in the conditions of rezoning section of the staff report dated 2023 March 20th. Should council support the bylaw at third reading?
Seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is item 13, bylaws, zoning amendment bylaw 2021, number 4500.191. Councillor Armstrong.
Motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2021 number 4500.191 to rezone 6643 Alds Road from single dwelling residential R1 to duplex residential R4 be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We have no notices of motion. Other business, it's correspondence from the Nanaimo Community Advisory Board, request for additional access to showers and laundry in Nanaimo. And we do have a delegation, Vicky Trill, Deborah Hollins, and Guy Bolio. Councillor Manley. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion. I'm the executive director of the Nanaimo Unitarian Shelter, and we have the contract with the city for the shower program in Caledonia. Thank you.
Well done, Councillor Manley. Thank you. Do we have these folks? There we are.
Yes, thank you, Worship. They're just coming online right now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Trill, good evening.
Thank you.
Are you the only one speaking tonight?
I am the only one. Yes, it was me and or, right? It was a long list of people.
All right, thank you. If you don't know the rules, it's 5 minutes. When you have a minute left, I will let you know, okay?
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vicky Trill from United Way, BC. Our offices are just on Trudeau Street here in Nanaimo. And I'm the manager for the Reaching Home program. Homelessness, as the previous speaker and mayor and council have all highlighted, is a complex and a severe problem. But I just want to thank the city, first of all, for the efforts that you have been taking to support the cause here. You've been providing funding and support in extreme weather. You've supported the shower program, and you've created the SPO. And we believe together, the city with the SPO, United Way, service providers, and Island Halt, if we work together, we really can tackle the complex problem. And at the end of the presentation, happy to answer any questions or provide more information if you'd like to hear anything further. So Reaching Home, you may or may not know, is a federal government program, and we are the CE for that program. The Reaching Home program is Canada's homelessness strategy. So it's a community-based program aimed at preventing and reducing homelessness. And this year, last year, and a number of previous years, we've put more than $1.7 million into Nanaimo in this cause. one of the projects that is being funded this year, you may have heard the point in time count. CMHA Mid-Island Branch, led by Andrew Thornton, will be conducting this count April 27th. The last time it was done is in 2020. So we'll get some base level data, demographics, something that's a little more up to date about who's out there, who's experiencing homelessness, and where a little bit more about them and who they are. But I also want to address what's on your agenda that was sent by the Community Advisory Board. And the Community Advisory Board is how we decide where the funding goes, how we decide what will be the most effective solutions for using funds, and how we can all work together to be able to tackle the problems of homelessness. And last month, we heard a report at the Community Advisory Board meeting from Dr. Sandra Allison, who reported in tears about what they were seeing from their personal care outreach team. They saw an extreme increase in head and body lice, and to such an extent that these people were coming into the emergency room and having some pretty severe complications. And she just was reporting, you know, this is something that's super solvable, something that, you know, we know how to tackle this, but just not having the resources or enough coordination with local groups to be able to solve the problem. And so that's really why I'm here today. That's why you have the letter in front of you from the Community Advisory Board to say how can we work together to be able to solve the problem of head and body lice, and even bigger, all of these other complex issues that you've discussed tonight. So some of the solutions that have been discussed through the Community Advisory Board and were recommended through Island Health is, well, body lice. We need showers and clean clothes. And we have some showers, and we believe that with some more showers and an expanded shower program, that will really be one thing that will help. Head lice needs wet combing and or medicated agents. Something Island Health has been working to secure is our Nix, which is a very expensive solution, however, fairly effective along with wet combing. So before you today, and love to take your questions too, thank you. We're asking, how can we together work on this solution? Wondering if the city would consider coordinating a plan to fix the lice solution in collaboration with SPO, United Way, and other frontline service providers, as well as Island Health, as well as expanding the shower program and laundry services. And yes, and together, I know that we can make a difference. Love to take your questions.
Thank you very much. Questions for the delegation? Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Ms. Hill. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm curious, so the CAB receives federal dollars to alleviate issues related to homelessness in our community. Would the CAB ever consider funding an expanded shower program and an expanded laundry program, given that it's the federal dollars into the community that are meant to deal with this?
Yes, so one of the projects that is being funded is the Unitarian Shower Program, and it's currently being funded and it will continue to be funded April 1st. And I think that I'm not sure how much of a program that gives them. However, with the head and body lice outbreak, the request was more funding, and yeah.
Right, and sorry, so you do currently fund, would you consider an expansion of that program? Are we out of the funding cycle? Is that why you've come to the city? Okay, but
yeah,
next funding cycle, is this something that your group would look at?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are the kinds of applications we receive. And so the funding cycle is April 1st and it goes for 1 year, March 31st, 2024. And so they have just been awarded their funding for the year.
Okay, thank you.
All the funds have been allocated. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. In order, Councillors Perino and then Eastmere.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you to Ms. Trill. You mentioned that you have some showers now. Are those the showers that you've mentioned at the Unitarian? Is that what you're talking? So that's it, right? How many showers are there?
That's a good question. The counselor who just left would be the better one to answer that for me. As far as I understand, along with the city support and United Way support, they are able to provide services 3 to 5 days. However, yeah, not, and of course, only in that one spot, limited hours and not on the weekends. That's what I understand. It could be off. You can ask Councillor Manley for more details.
And if you'll allow me, Your Worship, I wondered about laundry, where they're getting laundry done and that kind of thing. What? Yes.
Yeah, here and there. So we have had some initial conversations with organizations such as Island Crisis Care and Unitarian and others, and they do provide laundry services for people who are accessing their services. As far as just, we've heard other communities doing like a coupon system where you can take it to the local launder and they can do their laundry for free. I'm not aware of anything like that. And there's certainly gaps in the accessibility of laundry services.
Thank you so much for speaking to us tonight, because it's one of those things you don't think about. You just, we're always talking about food and housing and not the basic necessities. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. Through you, my question is about what additional shower access would look like. So we do have the shower program at Caledonia Park, but would you say that there's a need to have access to showers in other parts of the city, not just that area?
Yes, I would. So I would think that the shower hours need to be increased, as well as the service needs to be at least for another 3 months, so that this problem can actually be tackled with the head and body lice. But it's been pointed out that both the Woodgrove area and what is the other, is it Norwood area, where there's a real gap where people might not be able to make their way to where the current shower program is.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure what the solution is over there, but I leave it in your capable hands to come up with something, or we can together.
Are there other questions at this time? Okay, I'll leave it for other questions.
Are we finished with questions for the delegation then? All right, thank you, Ms. Trill. You're welcome to stay and listen, obviously. Questions for staff? Councillor Eastman?
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and invite me back if you want to hear about anything else and how we can work together.
Thank you. So if I may, I would like to put a motion on the floor for consideration that we ask for a staff report on the feasibility of expanding shower program access throughout the city.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Brown? Just to speak to it?
I think it seems like a reasonable request, given the scope of the problem that our unhoused population is facing right now, and recognizing that as a city, we don't have a purview to build housing, as we've said, and this is sort of one of those low-hanging fruits that we actually could take some action on, and that would have an immediate impact on the well-being of people's lives, and also recognizing that our hospital is at over capacity, and the emergency room is a tough place to be, and so if this helps people avoid having to go to the emergency room to deal with a head and body lice situation, and also deals with the situation of discarded clothing, because people are having to throw away their clothing rather than have access to laundry facilities. And if we could nip that in the bud by offering more access to showers, that seems like a reasonable thing.
Mr. Lindsay, I wonder if you could comment on what the city has done in the past.
Well, I think it's been mentioned, Your Worship, this evening, but since 2018, the city's provided both the space at Caledonia and operating funds, so for the last 5 years. So that's provided service for 5 hours a day, Monday till Friday. More recently, I understand the Unitarian unionized, and because of the increases in the budget, they had to, they approached us and ultimately said they had to pull back on the hours. They went from 5 to 3, but I believe, just listening tonight, I believe that maybe the money that was referred to that's coming from Unitarian through the cab was to make up the difference. So it's continuing to operate at 5 hours a day, as it has been since it opened in 2018. Staff were asked about expanding the hours, and it's a operational issue down there now. We have commitments with other groups that use that area, so the feeling was that we could not expand it for more than what's currently allotted.
And what other groups are using?
Mr. Harding, I don't know if he's still there, if he's going to jump in, but the VI Raiders use it as their practice field.
Amongst others. All right. Councillor Hemmons and then Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to support the motion, in part because I think you just asked really valid questions that I think we should have back in a staff report. Also because I'm fairly familiar with the content, I believe, that's going to come forward in that report, but this is a different council, and I think it's up to this group to make decisions for this group. I am curious, though, the federal money coming into Nanaimo is significant, and I would be very curious to see the CAB, if this is really an emerging issue, that the CAB would divert funds that are purposely brought to the community for that purpose. And further, just a piece of, I think I would have, if this were I think I would have liked Island Health to come and speak to us tonight, rather than going to the CAB and then having the CAB come to us. And I just want to state that preference. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I was just going to echo what Councillor Hammond said. This is a health issue, and once again, we're being asked as another download, which is concerning to me. We've already spent 6 years of doing this, and but I probably will support the motion because I am curious to see if there is anything in the north end where we know we've seen a huge increase in homeless population, to maybe do that up there. And I agree with what Councillor Eastmer said. This is not a place to keep our hospitals being busy with people, and we know that lice can really severely infect somebody and they become septic and stuff, so it's taking up a lot of our emergency time as well as even possibly our ICUs. So I will support it because it's just for a report, and then I'll have to wait to see afterwards what comes back. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Your Worship. I second it for discussion because I'm not totally sure where I was going to land, but I'm going to support the motion. I had a gentleman ask me in the summer, a business owner, if he bought a mobile shower, would there be a community group that could use it? And we kind of talked about it and it didn't go anywhere, but I think it raises valid questions that should be answered, and maybe that's not necessary council funding. I think it can even be questions of, is our existing funding the best that we are providing for a shower program, the best use of that funds? Is there a way we can leverage that funding better? So I would be very interested in that information in a staff report, what the funding has been used so far, what the CAB funding is being used for specifically, and then from there, if there's a course of action to be taken, I would feel that I have the appropriate information to at least vote on something. So I will support this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Perino, then Councillor Thorpe, then Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Your Worship. And more of a comment, I think this is definitely a public health issue. And, because they deal with the lice situation in schools and, in the different areas. But something that I wanted to mention that Councillor Brown brought up, there are mobile showers, and we could, in fact, seek some either help to fund or seek some funders to help to buy a mobile shower and move it around the city where the needs are the greatest. So there are some options out there. We don't necessarily have to build a building with showers. It's possible to do other things. So that I just wanted to mention that. So I will be supporting this as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Like several other councillors, I'm inclined to support the motion, but I certainly have some hesitation. As others have pointed out, this is a public health issue, and the city is being seen once again as a provider of social services. And I struggle with that. I would hope that any report that comes forward would also attempt to identify other organizations or groups within the community that could take some ownership for this issue. It does not have to be the city per se or city staff. Now, I don't know how easy that would be to include in the staff report, but I would just like a variety of options to be presented. We should not be the only ones being asked to deal with this problem, and I admit it's a problem, and I'd like to see a solution, but I think it can come from other places as well. Thank you.
Councillor Gisselbrock.
Thanks. I think much has already been said. I think there is a problem, and it's going to put pressure on our health system, and it's something that needs to be addressed. And I think in that report, if the city can be part of the solution and make sure that the funding and the responsibility that's out there, in other areas outside of the city is properly directed where the responsibility lies to help deal with it. If we can be part of the solution, I think it's something we need to pursue. So I'm looking forward to the report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Thorpe tonight in his comments. This is clearly and simply and most directly a public health issue. If the city hadn't been supporting this program as it has in the past, I would probably actually vote against this tonight. We have an entity supported through United Way, basically, asking us to provide monies when they, at the same time, received 1.7 million, I believe was the figure indicated tonight earlier, from the federal government to address issues. We have Island Health with a budget of hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars annually that seems unable to address what is clearly a public health issue. I would assume Dr. Allison, the health officer for the area, is aware of this issue. I note there is no support or comment from her on this. As Councillor Hemmons wisely pointed out tonight, we haven't received any comment or intervention or request from Island Health as well. So I look forward to the report, but I want to make it clear, I absolutely am reserving my right, which is nothing unnatural, to vote against this proposal if it comes back and says that we can afford to do this, so to speak. We can afford to do anything, I suppose, if we wish to, but filling the role of the province, and Island Health in particular, and to some extent the federal government, we're accepting downloading in an indirect way at a request from an entity, so to speak, or a group that is funded by the federal government to help fulfill a provincial mandate. If there was ever an example of the kind of offloading and downloading, this would certainly be it. And I well appreciate the human sympathy around the issue of head lice, etc. I get that. But we have two real orders of government in this country and a third, and we're a creation of statute. Our job is not to keep trying to fill the gaps between governments that haven't accepted their responsibility and yet have access, as Councillor Armstrong always reminds us, to 92% of the taxation revenue in this country, when we have, as municipal governments, 8%. So I'm going to support it tonight, and I look forward to the report, but I am very conscious of the indication that has been made by various members of council in the discussion tonight to staff around what that report should contain, particularly around sources of revenue, who's paying for what, because it appears to me in the face of it what simply happened here is the Unitarian Shelter unionized. They can't quite afford to provide the same numbers of staff, and everyone is turning to the city to fill that gap. So I'm not overly pleased at that prospect. If I've inspired anyone else, now's your time. If not, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Any items on question period, Ms. Gurry? Thank you. Thank you very much. We have Glenn Jabali. The item noted is policing. I assume that's a reference to the delegation. And I don't see Mr. Jabaley here anyway, so I guess that takes care of that. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Manley. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you.